You are listening to the Family Business Podcast, the podcast aimed at delivering insights to help your family business thrive. I'm your host, Russ Hayworth, and each week I'll be bringing you interviews from family businesses and their advisors from all over the world. So, without further ado, let's get on with the show. Well, hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Family Business Podcast. I'm your host, Russ Hayworth, and I am really excited to bring you this episode. This is a bit of a preamble, which I'm actually recording after the interview, but I have interviewed today Sir John Timpson of the Timpson Group. Now, our UK audience will know all about Timpsons. They're on pretty much every high street, a very well-known family business here in the UK. For our non-UK listeners, Sir John does give an overview of what the business is. But if you are unfamiliar, I would suggest looking it up and having a look at the type of things that they're up to, and also having a look at some of John's books. Just wanted to record a little bit of a preamble to introduce the show, because I was a bit nervous and excited when I started talking to John, so I just kind of got straight into the show with no real intro. I talked to John about the business, obviously, also about the family side, and also his fostering, which he did for many years with his late wife, Alex. I think you'll agree when he starts to talk about that. You can hear the passion and how passionate he is about that still. So it was great. It was a really enjoyable interview. I went up to Timpson House in Manchester to have a chat with him, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Well, hello and welcome to the Family Business Podcast, a very special episode indeed this week. I am delighted to be joined by none other than Sir John Timpson. Firstly, John, thank you very much for your time.
No problem.
This morning. And perhaps we have a global audience, and so perhaps the best way to start is to give a bit of a background on yourself, the Timpson Group, and how you came to be where you are today.
Well, shall we start with what the business does now? Because that's quite unfamiliar to people who don't live in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be great.
We describe ourselves as a multiple service business, and it's truly that now. The core business is shops that do shoe repairs, key cutting, watch repairs, engraving, and a lot of them do dry cleaning, and we do passport photos. So it's lots of services under one roof. Uh-huh. We've got about 1,000 plus of those shops. A lot of them are in supermarkets, some are on traditional high streets. Then we've got another business that does photo called Max Spielman, which is on high streets and also in supermarkets as well. We've got another photo business, which is a franchise business called Snappy Snaps. We've got a dry cleaning business called Johnson's the Cleaners. We've got a small dry cleaning business called G's, which is based in London and has a number of international franchisees. And then we've got a locksmith business, which has got lots of vans going around. So, and we've just started very small at the moment, but it's starting to grow, a barber's shop in supermarket car park business.
Fantastic.
So it's lots of different things, but the core business is something which you don't see anywhere else in the world, because no one developed from shoe repairs quite as we did. But so how do we get there, I guess, is the question. Or how did I get there?
Because it was founded by your great-grandfather?
Well, my great-grandfather was the reason why I never had an interview for a job. Because he started, but he was in shoe retailing. Started in 1860s and opened, like you do, one shop in the centre of Manchester. I've opened a lot more shops around Manchester and then spread from there to Liverpool and Sheffield and so on. By that time, his son, my grandfather, was running the business, who built it up to, by the time I started, 260 shoe shops. But they started to repair shoes, in the late 19th century. But not repairing them themselves to start with, but getting various cobblers around who came and collect shoes from our shops and brought them back again. Then they had a central shoe repair place, and gradually regional shoe repair depots, and then they started to open separate shoe repair shops. So when I started in 1960, and there was never much question as to whether I would go into the family business, it was 260 shoe shops and about 80 or so shoe repair units. Right. And but I was really involved in the shoe retail side of things. Did a buying job, bought lady shoes, became a director far too young, and then we had a complete bust-up in the boardroom.
Yeah.
And that's because by then, I mean, I was fourth generation, lots of family shareholders all over the place, most not involved in the business, but some were, and particularly my father's cousin, who was very keen to, he was an ambitious guy.
Right.
He was a director with my father, and I was on the board, and in total there were 9 directors. And cousin got all the other directors on his side, and it asked and then forced my father to resign as chairman.
So how did you feel at that time? Because obviously you're sat on that board, and did it feel like the whole of the board of directors were against you? And how did you manage that with the relationship with your father?
Well, he felt pretty angry as well. Well, it probably brought my father and myself closer together than any time before, because I was going to support him. I didn't think the rest of them knew how to run the business, frankly.
Right.
And it was pretty inevitable if we let that all happen. My job wasn't going to last much longer. And so we weren't going to stand around. And my late wife, Alex, wouldn't have let me stand around, because she was, so you've got to get back in there and sort it. And there were only 3 things we could have done in that situation. We were a public company. We'd gone public in 1929. The family in total owned about 55% of the shares, but then, of course, the family is now split. So so there were 3 options. One, you could just give up and let them take over and find something else to do. Secondly, you could go and have an extraordinary meeting and try and get the shareholders to back us, as opposed to Uncle and the rest of the directors. Probably not a very clever thing to do, because it's not going to do the share price much good and all that. And the third possibility, which is what we did, was to actually offer our shares to and eventually sell our shares to a possible bidder. So then we had 3 months of takeover battle, because it wasn't, another one came in to try and outbid, and then it's all over, and I'm still left there. I sort of survived through that lot.
Yeah.
Difficult, but and then I went to work for elsewhere in the group that bought us.
And that was a managing director role, wasn't it, with the company?
Well, eventually, first of all, I was working for a business called John Collier's, doing not very much.
Right.
And I went to hand in my notice. Actually, I couldn't see a future with all that. And they said, the chairman said, "Do you live anywhere near Liverpool?" It's a strange question. And Wilmslow was near enough for him, so. He said, "Well, look, we've got a business there which sells furs and leather clothing in 60 shops. And week before last, I fired the chief executive, the finance director, and the buying director.
Right.
So if you live that close, why don't you go there and look after it for a bit until I can find someone decent?" So, so that's what I did. And I did that for the best part of 2 years, and then it taught me an awful lot. And then they asked me to go back and take over from father's cousin to run the core business for them.
Right.
So that's how I got back into what was no longer a family business. And, but that was all right.
Yeah. And then you led a management buyout to get it back into the family hands.
Well, eventually, I mean, one of the things, if you're part of a group, as I was, that you want to survive, one of the things to make sure of is that there's somewhere else, some other part of the group is doing worse than you are, and then you're fine. And that wasn't difficult in that group, because a lot of businesses were struggling.
It's like when you run away from a bear, you only have to be the second slowest person, don't you?
Yeah, that's right. Yes, exactly. That's absolutely spot on. And but eventually, of course, the group was doing so badly because it had so many bad performing bits that it eventually got taken over. And I'd already spoken to, I never knew what a management buyout was, but met someone, my wife met someone who did, and said, "Why don't you talk about it?" And so we did I did ask the original group whether they'd sell it to me, and there was a quick no. And as soon as we had taken over, it suited the new lot to get the cash. And so that's how we came out of. And it was, but of course, when you do a management buyout, I mean, you haven't bought it. You've got a very small share in it.
Yeah.
Normally, but we had a real piece of luck in the way it was negotiated, and some odd mistake on the way in our favour, and we finished up with 80% for the management. Right. So it was, and I got over 50% of that. So it was getting back to being a family business. And, yeah.
And was that the motivation at that stage? Because obviously you mentioned when the dispute, shall we say, within the family happened, and your dad was effectively forced out. It brought you and your dad closer together. You had those options. If, for example, you'd chosen the shareholder option and they'd potentially backed the other board, it could possibly have closed off the option for the MBO later on.
Yeah, well,
your appetite for it.
I mean, at that stage, when we had the boardroom bust up, no one had ever heard of management buyout, right. Certainly not me, and I don't think the rest of the world knew anything about it. Ours was basically, when we did our buyout, it was the second biggest in the UK.
Right.
It was a very new thing. No, I mean, the motivation by then was it was the best way to secure the right future for the business. And to be fair, right, very top of my wish list was to try and look after the people who had been loyal to the family. That all went terribly wrong, frankly, because in the next 4 years after we did the buyout, I mean, the shoe retail business struggled. Yeah. And it was always thereafter very clear it was going to struggle. It's a bit like if you're looking at some of the businesses that have got into trouble on the high street recently, shoe retail was in the same position then, right, in the 80s, as a lot of department stores have been in since for the last decade. Yeah. Really. And so I came to the conclusion that we couldn't afford to open another shop, therefore we couldn't develop the business, and it was maybe going to go into loss, so I ought to sell it. Right, okay. Which was totally against what I wanted in terms of looking after my people, because I did sell it, and quite the worst moment of the whole career was standing in front of the group down the road from where we're talking now in Wythenshawe, and telling them that I'd sold the retail shops, because I knew in actual fact I'd sort of sealed their fate as far as their future was concerned, and they would become redundant. Yeah, not nice, and I felt awful about it, really. But I kept the shoe repair business, which was then 140 shops, 145 shops, right, making a bit of money, 300,000. Yeah. Turnover about 6 million. So a nice little business, bit of a hobby. And so that's where we started a completely new thing. And that was without venture capital, so it had become the other directors, 2 of them, they had shares. But, then about 3-4 years later, I bought them out. And, right. So since 1991, it has truly been a family business. Yeah. And also it's what you do. You spoke earlier about the diverse range of businesses that you have within the group, and the scale of the business has grown substantially, hasn't it, since that time? You're talking about 140 odd shops then. Yeah, we've now got over 2,000. We've got just nearly about to clock up to 2,100. Which is, it poses a couple of questions from my perspective. Now, as you mentioned, we're in your head office in Wythenshawe. We don't have a head office. Oh, okay. We strongly tell them we do not. This is Timpson House. Okay. This is where we support. This is part of the support we give to the people working in the branches. Okay. We don't run things. So this is part of my question. In fact, is the culture within the Timpson Group is envied. It is something that is very apparent. And I came in this morning, everybody says hello to you. I got offered a couple of cups of tea from people just walking past as I was sat in the waiting area. How do you scale that culture? Because it's not easy to do sometimes on an individual site, let alone on 2,000 sites. And it's something that Timpson Group seems to have achieved quite, not easily, I don't want to say that, but quite consistently. Well, it's taken us 20 years to get to where we are now. You come on a special day, by the way. This is our perfect day.
Yes.
This is our perfect day here. We only have one perfect day per year.
Okay.
And why do we have it? Because this is the day when every office is perfect.
Okay, brilliant.
And you might have seen a couple of guys going around with clipboards.
Yes.
So everyone gets marked. There's a prize for the one with the most perfect office. And we do that in the shops as well. We pick a perfect day for each of our chains of shops. And on that day, each of those shops in that chain have got to be perfect.
Right. Okay.
It's a way of keeping up standards. How do we... Well, as I say, we've been doing something a bit different for 20 years. And all started from the fact that we realised that if the success of this business depends on giving a great service to our customers and doing a great job, and that the only way we can actually do that in every case is to give the people who serve the customers the freedom to do what they want. You can't create great service by having a set of rules, having training courses that say you've got to do it this way, and giving people the words they've got to use in every case. You'll only do it by giving people in the shops, people who serve the customers, the freedom. Right. And so we set off on a campaign to do it. And it took... Even the people in the shops were reluctant to do what we wanted them to do. So look, just to illustrate what we mean by freedom, you can spend £500 to settle a complaint without talking to anyone else, even if you started this week.
Wow.
And we also said you've got a price list there, but just treat that as a guide. You can charge what you want. If you've got a customer who deserves a discount, or you want to do something special for somebody, that's fine. They were very wary of doing that to start with too, because the problem was that their area manager, or whoever they reported with the area manager in those days, they thought that would tell them off if they started to do what I wanted them to do, which is quite right. That's what would have happened. So we had to spend a lot of time trying to get the whole people in management roles, all the bosses, to change the way they were being a boss. Okay. Which took 5 years. No boss in this business is allowed to tell anyone what to do. Right, okay. Which is counterintuitive for the term boss, isn't it? Yeah. It is a new skill set. And admittedly, they said to start with, or they were saying, how can I be responsible for the job that you've given me to do if I can't tell my people what to do? But anyway, we explained that being a boss is about helping the people who work for you to be the very best they can be. Your job is to look after your people. But then the other thing we discovered is to run a business the way we do, it only works if you've got the right people, the right personalities. So we had to train everybody to, when they're interviewing, to recruit on personality and nothing but personality. Fantastic. And am I right in thinking that the Mr. Men make an appearance in... That's where my little Mr. Men came in. That was my initial device to explain to people what I meant by that. So they have this interview form, which has got Mrs. Happy, Mr. Keen, Mr. Punctual, and so on. And then there's another lot who are Mr. Scruffy, Mr. Dull, and Mr. Dodgy. And you just... All I'm saying is, just get them to talk. I'm not interested in what their CV is or what they've written on their application form or the normal sort of questions. Just get them to talk about themselves. What do you do at the weekends? So they're revealing what their personality is like. And then tick the boxes that most fit the person you're talking to. You get an impression through those type of conversations about someone's values as well, don't you? That they're all of that. You know, if their weekend activities are not particularly inspiring, then they might not be the type of person that would inspire the right behaviour. If they tick enough boxes, we say, please come and work in one of our shops for half a day with someone who knows. Actually, I was out around shops yesterday, and there was one person who was working half a day, and I checked up last night to see whether they had employed her. Right. And I was very pleased to find that they hadn't. Okay. She didn't look me in the eyes. She was a bit she would not have been anywhere near. I mean, we describe it another way as we want a business full of 9s and 10s, people who rate 9 or 10 out of 10. And I mean, too many of us put up with the 6s and the 7s. That's not good enough for us.
Right.
And it's not good enough for the 9s and 10s we've already got, because if you're going to look after your people, which is the very important job that the boss has got to do, one of the most important things you could do to look after them is to make sure they don't have to work alongside people who are going to have sickies, pretty boring, complaining all the time, and generally a pain in the neck.
Because it can bring you down. If you surround yourself with negativity, it can bring you down.
So another important job of the boss is to get rid of the people who are no good. We think that's very important.
And they've got the freedom again to do that. Through
the
environment you've created.
We try and do it by an honest conversation. We don't like warning letters or performance management programs. We like just to sit down and to explain to someone we've made a mistake. I mean, we obviously, I don't think you're right for this business. I don't think your best will ever be good enough for us. We both made the wrong choice. I think it's right that we should help you to find your happiness elsewhere, and we'll be as generous as we can, but we want to get on with it.
Fine.
And that works in lots of cases. It's not what the traditional HR department.
I can imagine HR professionals listening to this going, no, because process.
We don't call it HR. We've got a colleague support who are there to support our colleagues, to help them make sure we've got really great people right through the business and look after them. And a lot of that involves helping people with problems which have nothing to do with work. I mean, we're there for them when they went through stress, divorce, money problems.
You have a hardship fund as well, don't you, within the organisation?
Yeah, if someone runs into financial difficulty, as long as it's not too big, we'll lend them the money. We'd rather do that, because we only have two rules for the people in the shops. One is look the part, and the other is put the money in the till. And the hardship fund helps them solve their problem without having to break rule number 2.
Very good point. And there's holiday homes, and everyone gets their birthday off.
Everyone's had their birthday off since now for 14 years we've been doing that. This will be the 15th year.
Wow.
We decided it was because we wanted a centenary. We decided it was 100 years since we started repairing shoes in 2003, and just part of the celebration was to give everyone their birthday off. And it was so popular that that happens every time. We also now give parents the day off if one of their children is having their very first day at school.
Oh, fantastic!
Which is a new one that we've started.
Yeah,
the holiday homes have been really popular. We started with one near Blackpool. Then we got another one which was abroad, but we've now got 19 holiday homes, all scattered around the UK.
Fantastic. And there's a process for them to just book on and they can go.
We around September we book up for next year, and you've got to be a 9 or a 10 generally to. Or sometimes sometimes we use the holiday homes to help people who've got difficult problems at home and to give them a break. But normally it's just a sort of, that's what you want to do. You're a great. Met one who'd been yesterday to a holiday home at Great Yarmouth, half term. So loved it. Absolutely. And that's why we keep getting more and more, because it's such a popular benefit.
And that's where you get the desire from people to be the 9s and 10s, is because if you look after them, they're going to do a great job.
Sort of, the whole thing sticks together. I mean, it's just a sort of like a club of people who like-minded people.
And you get the feel of that here when you're here as well. It's a very vibrant environment to be in. If we can, I'd like to just take a step back to when you joined the business, because did you come straight into the business? You had some time at Clark's.
Well, my father wanted me to be an accountant, so he sent me into an accountant's office at the age of 17.
Right.
And so I left school a year early, but fortunately I got some A-levels, which came in handy later. I hated accountancy. I walked out after about 6 weeks. And so my father said, okay, we better work in the business then. So I started as a shop assistant in a shoe shop in Altrincham, and then I spent a little bit of time in one of repair factory where I was useless. I'm practically absolutely hopeless.
Right.
But I worked on the counter there, served customers. That was all right.
Yeah.
And so I spent a year flying. But during that period, I applied to go to university.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to Nottingham University for 3 years doing industrial economics, as it happens, working in shops and doing stuff during the university holidays. Mm-hmm. And then I went for just about 6 months on a graduate training scheme at C&J Clark's down in Street, which I did actually have to work in a factory, but they gave me the simplest possible job they could find, which didn't involve any machinery.
Right.
Because then that's when I left. Ever since then, I've been working in this business, or apart from the short spell I had working elsewhere when we were part of another group. But
and do you think the experience you had, because it was a family business when you joined and you were customer facing, so you either directly or indirectly had the freedom that you now allow your colleagues to be able to make decisions without perhaps the recrimination of a boss in the background? Do you think that's what's helped shape the culture now, is that having that freedom showed you the impact that it could have on the business?
I mean, every business in the 60s was pretty command and control. It had lots of rules. I mean, we had the standing orders for shoe repair shops, and standing orders for retail shops. Everyone had to do it in a set way. It was pretty rigid. So I don't think it really came from that. No, I thinking about it, the fact I'm so useless at doing practical stuff. I know my wife banned me from any decorating. It was just brilliant. If I knocked a nail in, that caused I'd do one job at home, and that meant about three craftsmen had to come to clear up the mess. So the fact I couldn't, when I started to run the shoe repair business, which I'd never really been involved in, although I was chief exec of the whole thing, but they're a very self-contained unit, and they ran it very well. But when I got more involved in it, I probably realised that I couldn't cut a key and I couldn't repair a shoe. And so, but it was a business that didn't have the sort of strategic thinking or marketing, so I could do that bit. And I worked out that to survive, a cobbler had to cut keys, and then that moved on to watch repairs. I mean, that's how we got to where we are. We did that ahead of anyone else, so that was good. But also, I think, as I couldn't do the job, I wasn't going to tell them what to do. I would give them the freedom to do it. They could teach. And I think that helped. But it was also very much this thing of realising that it depended so much on great service, and you could only get that by freeing people up and having the right personalities to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And your son, James, is now the chief exec of...
Has been for 17 years.
And how easy or difficult a transition was that for you and him? Because you wrote a book called... I wrote a book called
Dear James, and this was before he took on the role. This was really... that was the first book I wrote. And I wrote the book... Actually, this is the honest version. I wrote the book because a guy I was working with on the sort of general image of the business, I said to him, look, we do lots of really interesting stuff. We're quite innovative, and yet everyone thinks we're the sort of armpit of the high street. They're hidden in back corners. We're the smelly ones, we're the noisy ones, we're unacceptable, and so on. And it's quite difficult to attract people to work for us because we've got... And he said, well, one thing we could do to improve the image is to write a book about it. I'll get someone to do it. And I said, you won't.
Right.
Then I was going to write a book about this business. I'm the one who's going to write the book. And so, but then I wrote this book about all the good things we do to make the business happen. And I thought that was a bit arrogant, really.
Right,
so that's why, but then I thought about the title for the book being Dear James. And suddenly it wasn't arrogant anymore because I was just writing down the things that should never be forgotten for the benefit of my son, who was going to eventually take over the role. So that's why it was called Dear James. And it wasn't long after that James took over. So probably about 3 years later was when he became chief exec.
Right.
I was helped a lot by a non-exec director, Patrick, who's a really close friend as well, who also was very well respected by my late wife.
Okay.
So I'm very keen. You see, suddenly you find that once my son becomes the chief executive, I'm living with the chief executive's mother.
Yes.
So and she's got an interest in.
Yeah.
So, but it was. It was a no-brainer really, because James was so talented. I knew he was better than I ever would be. He was much more hands-on and quicker. I mean, he was younger, by that time. So that was. I was over 60, so it was just about the perfect time for him.
Do you think the process of writing the book helped with that transition? Was it a coincidence that it was so soon afterwards?
I think that I spent a lot of time chatting to this mate of mine who's non-exec, and about how the problem really was in terms of the rest of the people in the business who needed to be brought up to speed and realize that a 31-year-old can run a business. Because I ran the business when I was 31, so I knew it could happen. And and there became a natural time when his predecessor was about to retire, so it was the right time to do it. And it just put more pace into the thing. And James is just as, we believe in exactly the same culture, and that's so important.
Yeah.
It is, I think, quite different from most businesses.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Which is why, we don't recruit from outside other than into accountancy and IT. Maybe just the odd specialist role, but as far as the field's concerned, we do not have not one of our area team, area managers, assistant area managers, regional managers, the whole lot, sales directors. They are all started at the bottom of the business.
Wow. Okay.
Because it's such a unique way we do it. Because everyone gets it. They know that you don't tell people what to do. You look after the people. They recognise what a 9 or a 10 out of 10 is, and all that.
Yeah, and then that helps again with the retention of those. And if they see a progression in front of them, then it's something that they can...
No, there is a clear route for most of them to go a long way up the ladder.
Fantastic. And you mentioned your late wife and the influence that she had on you personally and the business. I think what's often forgotten in family business, or when people are giving advice to family business, is the influence of somebody who is such an instrumental character in the family's lives, but not directly involved in the business. I mean, in terms of ownership or role. Would that be fair to say that Alex had a very positive impact on the culture and the work that you've done?
She made an enormous difference in all sorts of ways. She did work for a few weeks just before we got married as a shop assistant in one of our shops. That was it. But she came along to a lot of the events, and obviously the long service things, and we had, which we changed from being in hotels, we started to bring people to our house. We had lots of marquee events, presentation awards. She got to know the people really well. But she made some really, really big calls in terms of critical times when I had big decisions to make, like whether I was going to float the buyout. She was absolutely convinced it was the right thing to do. When we had the big boardroom bust up, she just threw me into the battle. She wouldn't let me lie down and let it happen. And when I wanted to float the business on the stock market, she told me I was an absolute idiot and stopped me doing it because she said, you'll never be able to get on with these people. And that
would have been the right decision, wouldn't it?
Oh, God. The thing we would have lasted about 3 years. I don't think the city would have understood this sort of business.
No.
And we wouldn't have been able to just use the sort of, I suppose, quite maverick style that we used to run it. So that was very important. But she was a role model. She gave the business quite a social conscience, really, because she spent her life helping other people. Particularly as foster carer to 90 kids. But
I was going to come on to
but
that.
there are plenty of other things she did outside. She just sat at the end of our kitchen table most days with a notepad and a phone, and she was a helpline for loads of people, really.
Yeah.
But there's no doubt that attitude is one of the reasons why we do lots of different things. Like we're doing a lot of work at the moment with schools to make sure schools understand how to look after children. And I think slowly we're having an influence on the way schools are run. But also, of course, part of our attitude came the reasons why we've been enthusiastic about employing more people direct from prison. And so that was very much. But see, James has got a lot of Alex in him. They have a similar way they think. And
obviously the influence of parenting, it influences people's...
And I think you've probably noticed that you look at on our badges, most of them, it says part of the family since, and that's doesn't on mine.
I like yours there, semi-retired.
Yeah, semi-retired. Yeah, that's right. But we do regard the colleagues in the business, and our colleagues, not staff, because we're all in this together. But they're part of the family.
Yeah.
And although we do things with schools and we do things with prisons, we're interested in things happening outside the business. Number one for us is to look after the people who work with us. And there are a number of things that we do to help them through their problems in life.
And you mentioned fostering, and I have a vested interest, I guess, in this subject because my parents were also foster parents. So during my childhood, we fostered
short-term foster parents.
Yeah, short-term foster parents.
We were.
So during my childhood, I had many different children coming into the house that then were part of the family, and they were at various different stages in their development, I guess. There were some that had obviously come from very difficult backgrounds, some that had been passed from foster home to foster home and were finding that very difficult. We had one child from 4 months old until they were 2.5. So they had...
Well, I'm very familiar with all this.
So it's something that... it's not easy. I know you were saying Alex probably bore the vast majority of that.
That was really her job. I was very much a support role.
But it would have still had an impact on you, both positive and potentially negative, in terms of the time and care that's needed in doing that, whilst also running a successful business. So it's... or was it a difficult balance to find, or was it something that you found came quite...
I don't remember it being a conflict. It became quite the fostering actually sort of was the priority, because if I had to go to a planning meeting or whatever it was, I'd cancel what was happening in the business to go to that. I mean, because that's what you do for your own children. So and we're in that role. It taught me an awful lot. It equipped me better to look after the people in the business. There's absolutely no doubt about that. I don't know how you felt as being one of the children whose home got invaded and having to share your parents with more children.
Yeah,
it must have, in some ways, not been that welcome, but in the end, the children that were born to me, they all do things which are very much connected with what happened of the caring thing. My daughter's a teacher. My other son, Edward, went into first the law and then politics.
Right.
All about he was the minister for vulnerable children and families. So I mean, he's one of the probably leading experts on the whole sort of childcare thing, and that came out of the fact that he lived with a lot of foster children.
And I think it is difficult. I mean, obviously, I was relatively young when my parents fostered, so to me it was just normal. That was how life was. It wasn't that I'd known this life before and then all of a sudden it was being taken over. But it is also difficult when those children are there temporarily. They move on and
well, you get used to that after a bit.
Yeah, I think
you know that they're there for a short period of time.
We got quite attacked because we although it was short term, we had some for years rather than
they changed the system changed. It was 6 months. That was the end of it when we started.
Right,
and the last lot we had, there was a sibling group of 3. They stayed for certainly 2.5 years, and not far off 3, I think.
Yeah. Incredible, isn't it?
It was because the whole machine took longer to wind, but also they didn't tend to, the ones we had didn't tend to move on to another foster home.
Right.
They mostly went on either back to mum, back to dad,
Right.
or to a long-term foster home, or to be adopted. So that was good that we were just the gap between one part of their life and the next.
And there are synergies, I think, in terms of the management style and culture within the Timpson group and the fostering environment. Not precisely, but in terms of the fostering, it's creating an environment that is safe for the children to be able to grow and flourish in. And it seems as if, not in a childlike way, but in a very adult way, you're creating that within the group to say that you've got permission to say yes. If you're going to say no, that's probably
very smart of you to spot that, because I mean, one thing we didn't, no one told us about when we started fostering and adopting as well, was about attachment and how a poor attachment in early life can be the reason why this behaviour starts, and that these kids do not feel confident about themselves or the people around them, and there's lack of self-esteem, lack of self-confidence, and people need that attachment.
Yeah, completely.
Not just as a child, but they need it from the family all the way through, from their neighbours, from their friends, and also from work. And there is no doubt that the way we do it, because people tell me when I go around, I feel so much better coming into a job where I'm trusted to look after my own shop, and I'm valued. And so you want a business to feel like home, which is where the family bit comes in, because you're providing some of that attachment, which is really good for someone's well-being.
And again, that would be harder to achieve if you weren't a family-owned business.
Yeah, no, it's easier. It's easier because a family business tends to be very consistent in leadership. I mean, Jane's been running it for 17 years. I started actually running the business 42 years ago. So over the last 42 years, people have known nothing other than myself and James. Most businesses, they change every 3-5 years.
Yeah, I think the average is,
and it could be a completely different culture.
Yeah,
they all come in with their own. We won't do that. We will only bring in people who understand our culture.
Gotcha.
So that makes a big difference for a family business. And also, I think you tend to get in family businesses a feeling of getting to know people and actually wanting to meet people. Like, we go around all the shops. And sort of, I've got a group coming today. We call it the residential. There have been new people who started with us in the last 6 months. Right. We come in groups of 55, something like that. And right at the beginning, it's either myself or James we go and do the first hour.
Fantastic.
And I go and have a word with all of them, ask them where they're from now, tell them something about their shop, and then we do a few questions, a bit about the history of the business. So they're hearing it, they're actually meeting us. Yeah. And you don't get that in, the family business thing does create that, I think. And also, rather just consistency and the higher profile of the colleagues, we certainly don't have outside shareholders of any sort.
Right.
We don't even have to worry about the bank because we always make sure we've got cash. And so we are totally responsible for what we do. We have no one saying you can't do that, other than, I suppose, the government, health and safety, all these risk and compliance people and a lot of that we look to see what really is required, and if it isn't absolutely required and we're not going to go to prison and we don't agree with it, we're going to do it our way.
We have the same, by day I'm a financial planner, and we have a set of regulations or standards we have to abide by. And then in the middle we have compliance teams who tell us different versions of that.
And I imagine it's the same in anything, with particularly health and safety. There's the law, and then there's people's interpretation of that. And actually, if you spend the time reading it.
Yeah, if you're not careful, it's gold plating, it's called, isn't it?
Yes.
The lawyers and the consultants who are trying to make money out of you by adding much more to it to make sure that you're totally safe and protected from the legislation.
And they're not liable at all if what they said is wrong.
Of course not.
Fantastic. So, just conscious of time, and you've very generously given us your time this morning. Just a couple of things I wanted to ask you. If you were rewriting the Dear James book now, would you change anything?
Well, I have written a few more books since then, and I've probably, I think I hopefully have made it. The latter ones have been less complicated,
right?
Because I think simple's terribly important, and if you're finding it difficult to describe, then there's something wrong with it.
Yes.
And in actual fact, people from the outside don't realise how simple our business is. I mean, it's a very complicated business doing all these services.
Yeah.
When you think about it, and that's probably another reason why the easy way to do it is say, get on with it.
Yep.
You do it your way. I tell you an example of how complicated it is. A large number of our branches only have one colleague working in it at any one time.
Right.
We have an area in our terms, we've got 50-something areas that is generally about 50, 60 shops. And there's one person in the area team who's responsible to make sure that we've always got someone in one of our shops.
Okay.
Every day.
Yeah.
From 8:30 in the morning. We don't have a system for that.
Okay.
Other businesses would have a great computer thing, but it's so much better to leave the individual who knows all the people, knows who can drive a car, knows who likes working Sundays, has an objection to working Sundays, what needs the money because they're trying to save for whatever is trying to save, will work 7 days if necessary, and all these quirky things. Knows where they live, so who's the nearest to, how we do. And as long as people are sick by 7:30 in the morning and phone in, we'll make sure that every one of our shops has got someone, because they do it. They all do it in different ways. But that's an example of how you make it simple.
Yeah. But you also lose the personality of the brand if you then start bringing in a system that uses an algorithm to tell you the same information.
I think that interesting things happen. You talk about the brand. You know, we don't have a marketing department.
And you've won a marketing award recently, I think.
No, James. I was saying last week, James went and talked to some marketing thing.
Okay.
He started off saying, "I really don't know why I'm here because we don't have a marketing department." But in actual fact, we've managed, without marketing at all, probably to build up a very strong brand, I guess.
Fantastic.
I mean, everyone seems to have heard of us.
Yeah.
And mainly by talking like we are now. And, I have a column in a newspaper. I do the odd radio program about either one facet or another of the business. And decided some time ago that the graphics in the shops, there's no point in talking about shoe repairs and keys. Our graphics talk about the way we run the business. And customers are interested in that. Yeah. And they know us for the fact, you're the company that employs people from prison, you're the people who have this upside-down management thing. They don't quite know what it is, but they've heard about it. And the nice thing is, so many of you say, you're the business who got that really nice man in our shop down the road. Yeah. And that's what you're after.
Absolutely. That's gold dust, isn't it? That's fantastic. So brilliant. Last question for me then is, if you could disseminate your years of knowledge and experience into one tip for other family businesses, what would it be?
Oh God! Well, I mean, trying to one tip. Well, I think it depends. The success of every business depends on picking the right people, and that also includes the family.
Right.
You've got to pick the right person from the family to do the job. If there isn't anyone from the family who can run it, then you probably think as to whether you want to continue to have it as a family business. But be brave. And if there's someone in the family who ain't right, suggest they go and do something else. Yeah.
Fantastic. John, thank you very much indeed for your time. It's been an incredible interview for me. Real privilege to be able to talk to you. So thank you very much.
Fine. Thanks very much too.
Well, there we have it. That was my chat with John. Again, I think you'll agree it was a very insightful chat with him. I love his attitude to management, to empowerment, to creating an environment for employees to thrive. I think that's something that we can all take away from the interview today. As we mentioned during the show itself, Sir John's late wife, Alex, was very, very passionate about fostering and helping children from perhaps poorer backgrounds to get a better start in life. And following her death, they established the Alex Timpson Trust. So in thanks to Sir John for his time, I've made a small donation to the Alex Timpson Trust, and I have provided links in the show notes to allow anyone who's listened to this and was touched by John's interview to do the same. So if you would like to make a small donation, that would be great. Show a bit of appreciation to John for giving his time. The links are in the show notes. So until next time, thank you very much. That's it for this week. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you'd like to leave us a review, please feel free to do so on iTunes. Or if you want to get in touch, you can find out more information at www.fambizpodcast.com. We'll see you again soon.